It's challenging to take a business and grow its revenue. It's challenging to take a business and enhance its margins. It is really challenging to do both simultaneously. Some operators can do that. The vast majority cannot. But I think you're 100% spot on. I think we say cost cutting because yes, that is occurring. But it's in an effort to also make the business more efficient, more productive.
So if you're a business owner or you're thinking of buying a business, one of the temptations will be to look at, well, how can I increase profit and how can I save money to do that? I'm looking at how can I reduce costs so I've got more profit at the end of the day. But sometimes when we look at reducing costs, we're creating problems for ourselves. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to have a look into this problem of why cost cutting alone is not the answer to increasing profits. When you cut costs, temptation to slash your staff, reduce your quality, and that has implications on how you run your business. So welcome back to the Business Behind Your Business podcast. I'm your host, Paul Sweeney, and we're here to help business owners like you make smarter decisions leading to sustainable growth. And today we're interviewing Michael Haskell. He's a seasoned entrepreneur and investor who's been helping businesses like yours scale across New Zealand, Singapore, Australia, and the US. And Michael heads up Navitas Consulting, a firm that helps businesses grow by placing top-tier finance talent remotely and cost-effectively into their businesses to help them do just what we're about to talk about managing your costs and boosting profits. So today, what we're hoping that you will take out of today's lesson is how to identify those hidden costs that are draining your cash flow, draining your profit, why sometimes a remote finance team is going to be a better solution for you, and what Michael's going to share is some of those real world strategies that actually work to not just reduce costs, but help you grow your business and be more profitable. So Michael has over 20 years experience building profitable, purpose-driven companies, businesses, taking companies public. He's introduced cost efficiencies into a lot of those businesses to help them be more profitable. He's done the reviews for global firms, helping small, medium businesses, all through the activities he does at Navitas Consulting. Michael, welcome to the Business Behind Your Business.
Hey, good afternoon, Paul. Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure, absolute pleasure. I love talking about cost cutting. The accountant in me is really jumping out of his skin at the moment, thinking, I want to get my teeth into this. But cost cutting is, I guess when we think of cost cutting, we're just thinking of slashing expenses and saving money. Why should we not be thinking about that?
There are certain areas of your business that are that your bottom line, your profitability, and your cash flow are heavily dependent upon. And those are areas that you do need to be very careful before you consider any cost-cutting measures. You almost always want to be looking for ways to improve productivity. But ways to improve productivity don't necessarily always mean cutting headcount. But, that being said, if you can get a virtual CFO in Sydney for 3x, or a virtual CFO in Kuala Lumpur or Manila for 0.5x, and they're going to give you the exact same or almost the exact same in quality of the service that they're giving, you probably would be inexperienced to not take a look at that opportunity, right? If it's going to be a 3 or a 4 times cost reduction exercise, it's worth looking at. I think the first thing that I normally suggest to entrepreneurs to do is to take a look at the various portions of your business and which areas are firmly involved with gathering revenue, which areas of your business are firmly involved with service delivery or product delivery or whatever we're delivering in order to recognize that revenue. And then what other areas of your business are areas of your business that help facilitate those areas that maybe wouldn't be as core for keeping the lights on. And I guess once you assess, where these roles are, which roles are doing what for your business, and that is an exercise in and of itself that a lot of, I think, small business owners maybe don't understand. Is this a direct cost or is this an indirect cost to gathering and growing our revenue? Once you establish that, then you can look at areas where you can kind of nip and tuck. and certain areas of the world are good for certain skills, right? So if you want, say, managed technical skills, India is actually a pretty good place to look. They've got pretty good competencies from a technology standpoint, and their costs are far lower than, say, United States or Australia or New Zealand. If you want, back office accounts, admin, chartered accountant, CPA support, Philippines and Malaysia are good. I mean, they've got good education systems. They speak English very well. They're good places to look. So really, I think the first thing to do is to determine look at your business with a microscope, try to figure out which roles are directly involved with recognizing revenue, which roles are indirect to recognizing revenue. Think about where we could maybe get a little sharper. And I would look at the whole business that way. I mean, I would look at even the supplier relationships that way and say, hey, where could maybe we nip and tuck here too? Because when you're talking about building the business to maximize its value, every couple of points of gross profit margin and net profit margin that you're able to kind of like wedge out of there magnifies itself substantially when it comes to your exit value.
Yeah. So I think there's a number of things in what you've just said. I think one of the key things is that there are key areas within your business, and although some of them may not directly drive that sale or that revenue, they're involved in delivery or creation, or even creating future opportunities, and they're important. Now, you mentioned as well the nip and tuck. It's sort of like changing some of the makeup of some of our spending to be, more more strategic about how we're going about it and getting better value for what we're spending, and also identifying where we are not needing to spend that money. And I think when we think of cost cutting, most small business owners, most media, or most corporates as well, they immediately jump to, what are we overspending on? And my dangerous thought there is, how do you know you're overspending?
Right. Yeah. If you don't know, you don't know. 100%. I think a part of that is also knowing where to get certain skills and what the market value of those skills are in different places. And that's just experience, right? In doing it. If your view is that I need to hire an accountant within 20 kilometers of where my business is, you have constrained yourself artificially, materially, right? If you were to cast that net wider, you even see it in certain countries. Take New Zealand. Hiring in Auckland is far more expensive than, say, hiring 2 hours down the road in the Waikato. Australia would be very, very similar. It's like, if you're going to have someone that, especially if they're going to be on a time and materials basis, right? If they're not going to be a full-time employee, but they're going to be on a time and materials basis, just the geographies you look at when you go out to recruit, even within your own country or your own state, your own, area, you might save 15-20% just going outside of an urban center. Imagine how much you can save going to a developing nation from a developed nation. The cost savings can be substantial for sure.
So I think the couple of things that you touched on there is that there's cost savings by looking at different geographics, and you can do that within your own country. Like you gave the example of New Zealand with Auckland and Waikato, and certainly I think of Australia. You got your CBD and you got your regional based service providers. Differences in pricing there, but I think you've also got what's the output that you need from that function, and if you can achieve the same outcomes at a lower price, then it makes sense from a business point of view to go ahead and do that. Now, are there situations where that can cause a problem?
Without a doubt. So for us, when we're talking about businesses that are going to the level that are going through capital raises and things like that, right? And if you talk about accounts or finance team personnel, your ultra juniors can struggle to be off-site and remote, fully remote, because they've never really kind of been trained in your organizational culture, and they sometimes will have a hard time self-managing their time, self-managing their performance, right? So oftentimes it's best for that crowd to be in the office with you. We actually don't really look to supply the ultra junior personnel. We look at the intermediate to the senior. As you would know, I mean, a lot of your major US, UK, Australian banks, investment banks, big four accountants, I mean, all of these folks have back offices in India, Philippines, Malaysia, right? They're all over Asia for the same reasons that we would consider as smaller business owners going, because obviously you can get high quality people at a reasonable price. But I mean, we'll hire staff from EY Manila or PwC Manila, and they've been trained as juniors in that work environment, right? So by the time they come to us after 4 or 5 years with those big four players, they've got those skills. They've been supporting businesses in Australia, they've been supporting businesses in the US, except that now the big four guys are requiring them to be in the office full time, right? So and commuting in, say, KL or Manila can be a 2-hour each way thing. So a lot of those folks don't want to be back in the office. They've got a lot of skills that we can redeploy as long as we allow them to have remote work. So I would say going with the intermediate to the senior level crowd is good. Giving them full remote work if they've been trained in that Australian or that American kind of corporate culture. And then the other group, if you want to have a CFO or even a capital markets advisor in your country where you're doing your build up, where you're doing your Series A, when you're going through a wholesale investment round, or you're looking at a actual stock market listing, having that person there with you to attend investor meetings, to attend meetings with the market authority, those sorts of things, that's helpful too. So I would say the challenges can be your ultra juniors that just aren't quite ready to self-manage from home, and not necessarily having the person with the super experience with, say, listing in Sydney or listing in Wellington or listing in New York or London or wherever you want to go through that process. But what we found is everything in between, right? So your folks from, say, 5 to 15 years experience, you can outsource that very successfully and cut some pretty material costs.
So a couple of key things there is that your ultra juniors you're mentioning, and I think this is the case across every industry, is that you can't just expect somebody to come fresh into it and be able to follow a system and process. No matter how good your systems and processes are, they need to have developed that understanding of the industry and how you work and how things are done in the industry. And that really, look, for all the people that are saying you can do this from home, you can do it by online learning, I have to say there's no substitute for that experience and learning by observing, which you get in that face-to-face environment. And then on the other extreme, you're looking at your top end. You want them connected. You want them available for those face-to-face discussions. Those being able to actually go to, I guess and meet with the stakeholders in whatever that process is, whether it's a sales meeting or a capital raise or even a funding application. Those sorts of things, you need the right people there.
Right.
Very hard to do remotely, I think.
Yeah. So that's what we found, right? So you're one key person on the finance team that's helping with whatever your current task at hand is. Are we going to go through a capital raise? Are we prepping? Are we going through our 3-year audit? What are we doing? You may need slightly different skills depending upon where you are in the maturity of your business, right? But having that person in your office beside you, able to engage with shareholders, engage with suppliers on your behalf, good. If you choose to have the ultra junior, I mean, you may find you don't even need them, right? But if you choose to have the ultra junior, having them on site is good too. But your intermediate through senior level offsite, because they've already trained the muscle, right? So they've already learned the work ethic. They've been in the office, working the 70, 75-hour weeks, and then putting commuting time on top of that, through their early into mid and late 20s. So that's their normal, right? That's what they know to do. And then when you give them the freedom to work remotely, they've already got the muscle strong. It's not as big of an issue for them to manage their time. Whereas if you get somebody straight out of uni, it can be.
So we've been talking here about getting the right, I guess, cost level for the type of role that you're needing fulfilled. Uh, let's just change the topic a little bit, or at least the angle a little bit. One of the things we often see is somebody new will come into an organization, particularly, or they might have a new advisor, a business coach, accountant, chief culprits there, but they'll look at it and say, right, you're spending way too much here. What are some of the dangers in just going in wholesale and just cutting costs, cutting headcount without? I won't spoil it. I'll let you.
Yeah, my first question as the business builder myself to an external consultant who's spending too much money here would be, okay, now how do you suggest that we're able to cut that? What other options do you see, right? So there's no doubt that there are going to be external advisors and consultants and suppliers that will know certain elements of your business, not, the inside the business, the personnel, but how that area of your business functions as well as maybe you do. And they know some other remedies for certain things and cost bloats that maybe you haven't seen yet. So they may have a very valid view, but my thought would be, okay, let's take a look at that. What are some of your suggestions? So if they don't have good suggestions, it's just a blanket, you're spending too much there, that I would see that as kind of hollow. But if they were then to say, you're spending too much here, and this is why, and this is what you can do about it, and if you'd like, we can even help you do this about it, then I would see that as a massive value add as the business builder. You don't want to go in and cut areas of your business haphazardly, but actually, I would say from what I've seen, entrepreneurs and founding teams tend to actually be more nervous about making cuts, right? It's like their bias is they're more uncertain about actually making cuts than those that are like way over the top and make too many. So not that those don't exist, right? I'm sure they do. But, most of the folks that I've interacted with have been pleasantly surprised when they've thought, well, no, this, if we cut 40% here, everything could fall apart. And then they did. And 2 months later, not only did everything not fall apart, but it's actually performing better after you've made some nips and tucks. So yeah, you don't want to be haphazard. Any external advisor or supplier should have some really good alternatives, right? If they don't have good alternatives, they're probably just kicking your tires.
Yeah, and I think that there's a danger there in just coming in and thinking, right, this is the approach we're going to take. It's in all the textbooks. We're going to cut these costs because they're way too high, without actually understanding. But you mentioned, I think when we were talking before, about a situation where you might have a large sales team, I think 30 compared to 20, and by comparison, a team of 20 is delivering as better the same quality or the same volume of outputs as a team of 30. So it might be a case of, in that situation, of looking at, well, do we need that many people? Well, why is that team of 20 more effective?
Well, 100%. So there's actually a number of different areas to look at there. I mean, if you're into margin enhancement, which we should be doing as part of any type of cost cutting, right? So you always want to be expanding margins. So say you've got a team of 30 sales consultants, obviously that's going to be a big cost center in your business. And yes, they are directly responsible for revenue generation, right? So they're fulfilling a very useful component of your business. But of your 30, you know this, any entrepreneur knows this, any sales manager knows this, they're not all the same, right? You might have 3 stars, you might have 8 to 10, pretty solid performers, and then you've got some up and comers, and then you've got some folks that are, kicking to keep their heads above water. And that breakdown is going to be different in every business, but that model or that theory is going to apply in every business, right? So if you look at that, and then you also consider, well, our leads cost us something wherever we're generating them, right? Whether we're doing a pay for play, whether we're doing digital marketing for everything, whether we're out in market building our brand through, traditional, more old-fashioned marketing channels, whatever we're doing to generate our sales opportunities cost us something, right? When that dollar of cost is given to a star, it's converted into $8, right? When it's converted into, when that dollar of cost is pushed over to somebody just keeping their head above water, we're probably losing money on that lead cost, right? So sometimes by getting a division or a team in ship shape order, you're not only going to perform better, but then again, your margins are going to go through the roof too, right? So you'll be cutting OPEX and you'll be expanding gross profit margins nicely. That is a good example of how that can work. But you have stars and you have role players, for lack of a better terminology, in almost every area of your business. And the vast majority of business owners are well aware of that. For me, I actually like, if you're in a country where you can get away with this and you can make this work, if you have your stars on salary, right, and you have your role players on contract, right, because one of the biggest challenges, I mean, being a long-time accountant, businesses, get liquidated because they run out of cash, right? So your cash is king, cash flow is everything. Now your clients can stop buying from you today, and the government will never compel them to buy from you again. Right? So that's instant, immediate, right? If the sales go away, just like that. But there's a substantial lag in letting your people go, right? And the government will come in and whack you over the head with a stick, or at least wrap your knuckles, depending upon where in the world you are, if you don't go through the proper processes to let those people go, right? So you've got your revenue drying up immediately, right? And then you've got, at least in most places, the 90-day lag with a number of hurdles to be able to reduce the cost that was responsible for servicing that revenue that dried up 3 months ago, right? So, that's another good example of where you can look at making some nips and tucks, like say, okay, does this part of the team, do they have to be on salary? Could we potentially justify and defend use of an independent contractor arrangement? If so, should we look at that? Or maybe even one better than that, could we use an independent agreement or a supplier agreement with an overseas labor supplier to help take that risk one more away, right? So that if our business does hit a downturn, and when things are going well, we all like to think that will never happen, right? But when our business does hit a downturn and those customers go away, hopefully for just a day, but sometimes for a few weeks, sometimes even for a few months, that there's not as big of a lag in cutting costs on the back of that economic or that microeconomic or macroeconomic slowdown that you're experiencing, right? Whereas a lot of businesses, man, run out of money because revenues dropped and they're still doing everything they can to make payroll. And then before you know it, the music stops and not everyone's got a seat.
Yeah. So I think one of the things I'm hearing there is, initially what we're doing is we're not changing the number of head or the dollar value, but what we're changing is the way that that's structured. And we might be, instead of having a full-time salaried salesperson, instead what we have is, maybe it's a sales agent and he might be free to work in 5 or 6 different areas, but he only gets paid based on the outputs he's producing. And then if situations change and sales drop, then you're not holding the can for his full-time salary. And I guess the other thing is, people engage somebody on a full-time basis, but don't have the markets developed, so they're not getting the sales for quite some time. So
Right.
changing, I guess, the way that we build the engine can have the same better outputs than just assuming that we have to buy off the shelf and just plug and play. So being smarter about how we build our operating systems, I think, or our resources, putting them together.
100%, right? And those are things that when I was a younger business builder, I didn't know yet, right? Those things tend to come about just through trial and error and through learning, continual learning and experience. And say you've got that team that was 20 to 30, sales professionals on salary. Now it's 5 to 10 on salary, another 5 to 10 on contract, and then the support staff, so the folks that are doing any of their appointment setting, any of their phone follow-ups, any of their email follow-ups, their support staff to their consultant function, and that's run from a 3-person team in the Philippines, costing you, 1,000 Australian a month. Why not, right? I mean, that just, to me, that's just a far more efficient way of running that sales team. And you can bet that, through aligning the incentives, right, to be more commission-based more, STI, short-term incentive and long-term incentive based, where these guys and gals are rewarded for success. You're aligning them to ownership. You're aligning them to everybody else, and by putting their support function in a low labor cost jurisdiction, you're winning there too.
I think one of the things that's coming through here is we're looking at, okay, changing the structure of our labor is a good way to cut costs and still be able to maintain production, okay, or sales. One of the other areas that I see is that a business owner will not go ahead and improve their business opportunities or improve their capacity because they don't want to spend more money. But one of the things I'm hearing here, and I want to make sure that we actually spell this out, is that sometimes what we view that we've got to spend is not actually what we have to spend to get that resource, to get that new opportunity in place.
100%, that's right. And of course, there's a lot of folks that will come in and do an external review on your business and tell you how you need to be spending less money and then invoice you for that intel, right? So, for us, when we come in and we try to help do a review of your business, our end goal is to place some staff with you. But you're getting our expertise free of charge, right? Because we're almost in a sales function rather than a consultant function in that way. So we're taking a look at your business with you, and we're going through and we're saying, well, hey, look, where can we make some adjustments? Where can we get a bit more efficient? Where can we improve productivity? Have you considered this? Right. Okay. Well, if you wanted to do that, we would have this available, right? So up until the point where you would pull the trigger on, yes, we want to do that, you haven't spent any money, right? And even when you do pull the trigger on, yes, we want to do that, you're still saving costs compared to what you did last month, right? You're still the labor that we're supplying, the augmented labor and skills that we're supplying, you're still spending less for that than you were spending before we got involved.
So sometimes I think we need to turn the conversation away from what costs are we cutting to how do we do this better.
Yeah.
And I think we're doing ourselves a disservice when we're just limiting it, the conversation or the objective to cost cutting. We've seen some worldwide, we've seen some big mistakes made, particularly recently. We look at some of the in the name of efficiency, we've gone and cut the costs by cutting this department without actually understanding what that department does.
Right.
And then the ramifications of that have been quite devastating. And look, it happens all the time. It happens in corporate, it happens in government, and we will see it happen in small business as well. But I guess in small business, generally the person making the decision is very much closely attuned to every aspect of what's going on in their business because it is a smaller animal. But as you grow and bring in more and more resources, more people, there is a danger that you sort of don't understand what's going on in your own business.
100%. I mean, it's challenging to take a business and grow its revenue. It's challenging to take a business and enhance its margins. It is really challenging to do both simultaneously. Some operators can do that. The vast majority cannot. But I think you're 100% spot on. I think we say cost cutting because yes, that is occurring. But it's in an effort to also make the business more efficient, more productive. And I think if you define efficient and productive, that's got to result in better, right? Or at least results in better margins with more cash for shareholders, or more cash for reinvesting in growth, whichever way you're operating your business. But I think, you're 100% right. I mean, you can get the revenue growth, you can get the margin enhancement, you can get those things if you are, a good operator and understand where you can nip and tuck, where you need to be investing, those sorts of things. And you get that through trial and error and experience.
Yeah. Look, I think what you've unlocked today is the need for some guidance here, some external help, because sometimes we are so caught up in how we're doing things that we don't have that, perspective that actually helps us understand where we can make those changes. And that's where it's really helpful to get in the skills and expertise of somebody like Michael and his team at Navitas Consulting to actually help work through that process with your business and identify the areas. Well, hang on, if you change your costs from this area to that area, you're actually going to deliver more efficiency. You're going to be more productive. You're going to be able to make more sales. So it's a good result. So how about we do that? But getting that external opinion from Michael and his team would be great. Michael, where's the best place for people to find out more about your services and what you...
So either the Navitas website, or they can contact me through my LinkedIn profile.
Great. Okay, good. And we'll share the links to Michael's website and his LinkedIn profile in the show notes, and always on the businessbehindyourbusiness.com website for you to check out. Now, Michael, we've talked about some great ways for business owners to reassess how they're spending their money, how they can improve the spending but deliver more profits, be more efficient. What's the one thing that you'd like people to take away from today's conversation if they did nothing else?
Right. Okay. So I guess from a revenue generation standpoint, you want to keep doing what you know works, right? Because you've established a marketplace, your revenue's growing, you want to keep doing that. But from managing efficiency and expenses within your business, you don't want to be afraid to look at things differently, because there's always new tech getting involved that can allow you some additional margin enhancement that just simply wasn't available 4, 5, 6, 8 years ago when you started building your business. So it's do more with revenue generation. It's like do more of what you know works. And for cutting costs, it'll be open, because of course doing things differently is confronting, right? But be open to thinking about things a little differently, because there are ways and means and tech out there that can allow for you to continue to scale that revenue while getting more profitable.
That's fantastic. Michael, thank you for sharing with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and some great advice. Encourage people to take on board, I guess, some of the steps that Michael shared with us about how to look at your business and look at how you can grow it profitably, look at your costs and manage them more effectively, and create a stronger, more profitable business in the long term. So Michael, thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Hey, Paul, thank you very much. I appreciate being involved.